Hi guys, I'm back with a tutorial for outlining. This is my latest piece. It's Walter White. Found this really nice reference. Absolutely love it. It's going to be so much fun doing this one. Just, not a boring bit in sight. It's all just really fun from what I can see. We're going to talk about getting down the outlines and how I like to do it. As you can see, I use a grid. This helps to get the proportions correct before you commit to colouring anything. Now, with coloured pencils, it's important to get something down, really. That's why I like to have a grid, because I'll always know where everything is and I can just concentrate on rendering. The first thing I want to discuss is negative space. This is something that, using a grid helps with. It makes you understand the idea of negative space a lot better, which is something that you need to think about if you're going to do life drawing and if you want to start learning about proportions. And a grid is a good way of introducing yourself to that concept. So what have we got then? Well, you can see just here we have just a bit by his ear here, and you see the shape here. And because this grid is here, it's forming a nice shape for us to look at. So this is the actual object, his head, and this is the negative space right here. The negative space has a shape as well as the actual object. So the best way to determine if you've drawn something accurately is to see if both sides look correct. Not just one side or just a line. If both sides look like they're the right dimensions. So here, to the best of my ability, I've sort of added this shape in here, which makes up his ear and his head. And then we've gone on to the next part and added another shape, you can see, and so on. And so doing it this way and seeing these shapes, these little slithers, if you look here, there's this part of his ear, there's, oh, why has it done that? There's this part of his ear, there's a little triangle here, little slither on the edge of that cube. So on the edge of this grid. So we want to do that exactly the same. And yeah, that's the basic idea of it. So we've got his glasses here, they're curving a bit. We've got this sort of shape here. It's almost like a sort of like a vase almost, if you will. This kind of shape that's going on. If we imagine this is the grid, you can see the kind of shape that we've got to draw in there, and the amount of space this occupies and the amount of space this side occupies. So we're constantly looking out for all these subtle measurements, looking out for places where we haven't quite considered something, or you've drawn a line and then suddenly the other side isn't quite right, so you should go back and change it. Like here, for instance, I haven't done this for a little while now, and I can see this is too big compared to here. This line is much smaller. So get my eraser. I don't think the outline's too bad. It's just that inner line there, just there, that isn't quite right. It needs to be slightly over a bit. And then the ear's slightly more pointy not as quite as round. And again, whilst doing this, I have to have a look at this shape here as well. Is this shape correct? Well, it's not quite there. I think it's slightly thinner on this side. So now I'm going to erase that, move that line over a tad. There we go. So it's getting there, it's getting there, it's a bit more. I think actually it needs to be moved over even more. Again, look, I'm looking at here now, this shape here. It's kind of like a ramp. And got to see where it finishes. And we've got to make sure the grid is the right size, so we size it to the size that we've got here as well. Yeah, and it's just about, again, you know, much like the colouring part of what I do, this part is also to do with patience. It's to do with not just accepting something because you've done it. You know, you're going to make sure that it's correct. If it's not, got to rub it out and have another go until you feel that both sides, you know, both this side, the actual object, and this side, the negative space around the object, looks accurate. Yeah, that is basically the way you do it. Yeah, I mean, you got to start thinking of shapes. You know, you got to think in shapes. So let's move over to the eye now. Here's a good example. You know, man-made objects, like his glasses, they are, you know, precision made. So there isn't anything really that natural about them. So the shapes they create are very fluid and very definite. You need to, you know, really lock onto that. Otherwise, they're not going to look like glasses. You can get away with a bit more when it comes to skin and human features, but something man-made like glasses, you need to get those shapes spot on. And that's why outlining helps for things like that mostly. I think for more organic stuff, I don't really outline as much, you know, like where I have hair, I generally just sort of maybe leave a little hint of where the edge of the hair might be. So I have a sort of just about a rough idea when I come to it later on when I'm colouring it. But the grid is there, and so it will tell me where that hair is and where it is in reference to other parts of his face. So it's a very good way of establishing where you need to draw and colour what. So yeah, negative space, very important. Now here we have, where is it? Just here we have this slither. I've really tried to make it the same over here, and another slither here. These little compartments that we're seeing. Again over here. You know, again these compartments dictate what those frames are going to look like, what shape they're going to be. And again, the other side of the frames as well. So we're looking at either side and the frames themselves while we're drawing. So we're going to do the same now with the eye. Now, this square here doesn't have much in it that I would like to outline necessarily. I just want to get a rough idea of the eye. So just going to do this. Start thinking about the distance between here and here, and here and here. Just got to think about this now. I think it's not quite as steep as that. I'm going to come over here think about this distance. Where are we? What about where are we going to be? I think we're going to probably, let's have a closer look. Yeah, around there. Like so. Keep your eraser handy. I really like using these Tombow ones. They can be a bit pricey, I think, but they're not too bad. To be honest, it's definitely worth it. Very fine erasing tool. So yeah, we're trying to create this shape here. Just adding more. Try and block out the tones and try and block up those things. Block out the textures and tones. Just break it down into shapes. What shape is this? You know, look at that shape. You know, it's almost like a cartoony boot or something. You know, you've got to think of it in those terms. You know, if I were to just draw it now, you know, you've got to think of it like that. You've got to get those shapes right. And in life drawing, you also have to do this kind of thing. You know, you have to make sure the shapes in between things are correct, as well as the actual objects themselves. And the other thing a grid enables is it automatically makes you reference other points. Yeah, so that your proportions are right. So this slither here corresponds with this slither here, and so on. And then we're going to have a little slither down here where his eyes, there's a kind of small thin slither here that we're going to need to create where his eye is. So let's make this part of the eye. And remember, this kind of goes into obscurity here. It's kind of black, dark here. This goes straight through that cross section like a target. And then we've got this thin slither appearing here, and then it goes up a bit and back down. We're constantly thinking about these things. The space in between things, the negative space and the positive space. I'm not too bothered about doing too much outlining, just enough so I can see where the main big things are, like his pupils, his eyes, his nose, his ears, his chin. I don't like to go into too much detail at this point, because I'm only going to erase this graphite and replace it with lots of colour, so I don't want to be overworking this at this stage. Just gently adding stuff in. And you can see there's a shadow like this here, and then that's where the pupil sort of lives. Around there. It's about that big. Maybe I've taken it a bit too far this way. Let's just knock it back a little. Yeah, it's probably a bit more like this. And don't worry if it doesn't look exactly like your reference at this moment. Just as long as you know your shapes look, that all these different shapes and lines look like they're in the right place, then you're good to go. You know, you don't need to worry about it looking like a masterpiece at this stage at all. It's about what you do next when you render that gives it its form. So how do I get this grid on here and on here? A lot of you have asked, oh, you know, what app do you use? Well, I don't use an app really. I mean, I use Photoshop to layer on top of my reference, but I don't really use an app. What you have to do is get your reference, and then you've got that to one side, ready. Then you need to get your piece of paper. Now, I always draw on Bristol Strathmore 500 series, 14 by 17 inches. So what I do is I go into Photoshop, I create a document that is 14 by 17 inches big. I make sure the pixel density is quite high, you know, because it's got to be able to hold any reference without shrinking the reference down. Then I like to go online and find a graph generator or grid generator. Just type in grid generator or graph generator into Google. You will find it. It will be a website with dimensions in a little box. You type in the dimensions. You say, yep, that's what I want. So I'd type in the size of my paper. Then it'll probably give you an option, you know, do you want a margin? You can have a margin, you know, like I have here. Do you want, you know, how wide would you like the graph to be? So I put 2 centimeters, and then you just click download or import, however, export, whatever they do on that particular site. It'll be a PNG probably, or PDF, and that's it. You've got your graph paper or grid, the same size as your paper. So you then go to your document which you've created, that is the size of your paper. You put it into that document, size it so that it fits perfectly, taking into account the margins and whatnot. Save it as a template, and there you have your grid template. You can then add your reference to that and keep changing the reference, or, you know, make a new one if you've got a different size piece of paper. That's how I get my grid on there. You just need a program. Doesn't have to be Photoshop. You just need a program which you can make a layer on top of a photo with, basically. So I mean, I think there's free ones like GIMP. You can use any of those. You know, you just need one that can make a layer. And that's it, basically. I mean, you just need to keep on looking at the shapes that you can see, and you need to just add them in. It's very, very simple. The colouring part is really the most difficult, and I will be going into that with this picture. I am very busy this month though, and I haven't been able to do too much. Life's just sort of taken over a bit, working and all of that, but so, you know, once I've started this skin properly, I will make a video for that as well, because a number of you have wanted a skin blending video, and this is a great one to do that on, because there's all kinds of things going on with this skin here. Really, really nice reference, this. I love it, absolutely love it. Yeah, can't wait to do this one. So yeah, hope that's been helpful. Give it a go, see how you do, and remember to also do life drawing, because that is very important. If you're just starting out, don't rely on just doing grid based stuff. Go and draw from life as well. That's everything from me for today, and I will see you guys hopefully not too far in the distant future. Hopefully sometime next week or in the next 2 weeks. Thanks guys, see you later.